Wonderful. Amazing to be with you all this morning. There's nowhere else that I'd like to be on this Saturday morning. Can I just see if the PowerPoint is working? Is that working? Yes. All right. So what price human rights is my title. The biggest change in abortion law through the back door. There's a sense in which it's right to say we have abortion on demand no matter what the law says. That's the truth. Linda's gone through the stats today. But there's something very specific that I'm going to want you all to do today. We're going to be distributing the team from Christian Concern, but we're working with a coalition of many of the pro-life organizations, Voice for Justice, Rachel's Vineyard, CBR. Don't really want to miss anyone out. There's lots of us there. We are working together to try, we've been working together in a specific project to resist DIY abortion, pills by post abortion. There's going to be a vote to make pills by post abortion permanent on Wednesday in Parliament. That, I would say, is the biggest change, biggest hard law change. Although the law may be being entirely flouted and that in effect we have abortion on demand, what we're going to get on Wednesday in the dark through the back door is the biggest hard law change to abortion. So something we really need to be praying into as well as repenting today, that we will see a miracle on Wednesday, and that this will be pushed back, and that we will not get pills by post, telemedicine, DIY abortion go through in hard law on Wednesday. And one way in which you can do this today is by filling out the postcards that we're going to distribute to you now. We've got the postcard, we've got the pen, and we've got the stamp. All right. And then what I want you to do is to then put the postcards into the table that Christian Concern has in the upper hall, so that we can send those postcards today so that they arrive on Monday in Parliament to your parliamentarian. So you just address, all you need to do is address it to your parliamentarian. So that's something we're going to do. And if you want to take some extra postcards, we've got them at the stand, so you can then go and do it. Now, I'm going to build into why we need to be doing all of that. But you know, if there's one thing I do by coming here today and saying to you, fill in that postcard, pray and resist Wednesday, then it's almost a job done. All right. But let's move then. I'll be whizzing over some of the stuff that Linda herself has covered. She's covered, you know, God's heart around abortion. But this is what I've been living a bit in Habakkuk of late. And this sums up pretty much how I feel in relation to where we're at in the nation. Habakkuk makes a complaint. How long, O Lord, must I call for help around abortion? He says, but you do not listen, because he's kind of crying out to God. Or cry out to you violence, but you do not save. Why do you make me look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrongdoing? Destruction and violence are before me. There is strife and conflict abounds. Therefore the law is paralyzed, and justice never prevails. Well, let me tell you, as an old legal hack, as someone who's been qualified, I was qualified in 1988, and I feel as if my whole legal life has been consumed with seeking justice for God's purposes and God's ways, but it's as if the law is paralyzed. It's as if justice never prevails. Sometimes it does. And you know, the justice is in standing. You know, standing is winning in the midst of darkness. The wicked hem in the righteous so that justice is perverted. That's really where we're at. The wicked have hemmed in the righteous in this nation because we have abandoned the Lord, because we've turned our backs on him. But the Lord's answer is, look at the nations and watch and be utterly amazed, for I'm going to do something in your days that you would not believe, even if you were told. Well, I can say this, the Lord says, I'm going to do something in your days. And wouldn't it be amazing that if no matter if the law seems paralyzed, no matter if it seems justice does not prevail, that we would see the end to abortion, that we'd see the rolling back. And you see, that requires a movement. That requires the Lord. That requires the Lord, which is why we're here today. So God made Genesis 1. God had God's father heart. He regards us and every single person that he's ever made as the apple of his eye. He's a father to the fatherless. We've got to think about laws. This is why these things are important. You know what? We shape laws either towards him or against him. And that's why our common law heritage rooted in biblical faith has so shaped and made so beautiful our nation historically. Why we have flourished and been blessed, of course imperfectly, and everything is this side of heaven. But we shape because God is a father to the fatherless. He is a defender of widows. And he is the potter and we are the clay. Psalm 139, we know that we're knitted together in the mother's womb. Look at the beautiful being knit together. Look, 3 weeks from conception, every organ complete. Next one, device. Oh, there we are, 19. Again, in terms of laws of God, as God sees it, no discrimination on the basis of sex, race, social standing, and age. Galatians 3, Matthew 19. The protection of the vulnerable, the poor, Proverbs, widows and orphans, the aliens, the handicapped, the slaves, the elderly. Life before birth. Over 60 references to conception. Jesus himself. We see the natural reading of the gospel accounts is that Jesus, we know that John the Baptist, there was a jump in Elizabeth's womb when Mary told her that she was pregnant. It was there anchored in a moment of time that Jesus escaped being killed as a baby. God cares. It's a gospel matter. So the law. The hard law. Sections 58 and 59 of the 1861 Offences Against the Person Act made it a crime for anyone using any means whatsoever to procure the miscarriage of any woman. In 1929, the Infant Life Preservation Act extended this prohibition to a child being capable of being born alive. In other words, for 100 years or more, there was an explicit and widespread public condemnation of abortion and severe penalties for those illicitly involved, as well as a genuine protection and understanding of the personhood of the unborn child. Article 2 of the European Convention on Human Rights. There we have an explicit reference. So this is current, it's live law, explicit reference to everyone's right to life shall be protected by law. No one shall be deprived of his life intentionally, save in the execution of a sentence of a court following the conviction of a crime for which his penalty is provided by law. So the European Convention on Human Rights recognizes in hard law the protection of life, the right to life. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights says everyone has the right to life in Article 3, liberty and security of person, and everyone in Article 6 has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. Medical law. The Hippocratic Oath, going back, I will give no deadly medicine to anyone Originally, this is what undergirded medicine. It was an oath that doctors had to take. If asked, nor suggest such counsel, nor in like manner will I give a woman a pessary to produce abortion. The Declaration of Geneva, I will maintain the utmost respect for human life from the time of conception, even under threat. I will not use my medical knowledge contrary to the laws of humanity. So these were policies affecting how the medical profession would behave. But note the subtle change from 1948 to 1994, when it was said that I will maintain the utmost respect for human life, no longer from conception, but from its beginning. Do you see the subtle change in wording, even under threat, and I will not use my medical knowledge contrary to the laws of humanity. In the 1950s, this was the image, this was a kind of normal image. You know, the image of a mum and dad married with a family, yes? So this is something you were getting post the war, families back together, European Convention on Human Rights. What you get then in the 1960s with the advent of the contraception pill and kind of like free love, the sort of sexual revolution, is you begin to get the ability to have sex outside of commitment, outside of marriage. It becomes more recreational than procreational. You know, the kind of societal taboos that would say sex before marriage, sex should be reserved for marriage. That kind of cultural expectation was removed. It was against this backdrop that you get the abortion bill that comes in, the Abortion Act in 1967. Linda referred to David Steele introducing the act. He drew third place in the ballot of private members, but it's worth thinking about how this actually happened and how change happened. And he introduced his medical termination of pregnancy bill into the House of Commons. Its first reading was on the 15th of June, and there was a protracted and arduous debate. Days and nights were spent arguing, rewording, lobbying, and generally manipulating events in both houses. This is what happens in Parliament. It's what's happening on Wednesday. It's a trick. It's a trick. But it's legitimate. And Parliament is sovereign. That's why and your MP is a public servant. So you must, this is why it's so important to not give up, to call your MP in these days, to get your friends to call your MP. It was all, the bill supporters simply seized their opportunity, eventually with parliamentary time being given by the Labour government, which is often what happens in private members' bills. So we need to think about producing our own private members' bill and to keep on producing them, to keep on publishing them and to keep on producing them. Eventually, with parliamentary time being given by the Labour government of the day to ensure its success, the bill passed its third reading on Friday, the 14th of July, 1967, so a year later, after an all-night sitting in what a half-empty House of Commons. And it was passed by a majority of 167 to 83, and it received the royal assent on Friday, the 27th of October, and it came into force on the 27th of April, 1968. 1 year later, David Steele said this, speaking at a meeting of supporters: the right men were in the right place at the right time. By contrast, is the dismal fact that the number of evangelical Christians who saw the issue and stood up and spoke out against the bill can be counted on the fingers of one hand. So effective opposition was too little, too late. The established church gave way at the time. Church leaders weren't speaking out at that time. So the wrong men were in the right place, and the right men weren't in the right place, or the right men weren't speaking out. And this is something that we now, in a world that's gone dark, where the lights have gone off, this is what we're doing here today. We're building the resistance movement. We have to build the counterculture, that will so speak to the culture, that will so speak to Parliament that we will change it. Where they will not protect women in unplanned pregnancies, then we now have to create our own parallel institutions. Our churches have to be the safe places. They have to be the hospitals. We have to save the mums, the babies, the dads. We have to bring the hope and the healing. We have to have ultrasounds in every city. We have, in a world in where laws are so determined not to look after our women and our babies, we have to build the safe places. We cannot look to government or to society to watch over us, but we will build the lighthouses and the life houses. In a world where the lights have gone out, we have to do it. And we have to, there's a whole raft of things that, of course, are attached to that. So you here will all know the Abortion Act itself. Essentially, it said a person should not be guilty of an offence under the law relating to abortion when a pregnancy is terminated by a registered medical practitioner if two medical practitioners are of the opinion, formed in good faith, that the termination is necessary to prevent grave permanent injury to the physical or mental health of the pregnant woman. And we know, as Linda said, that social abortions, the mental health of the mother will be worse if she continues with the pregnancy than not. And two doctors are meant to sign off on that in good faith. We know that, therefore, what we've got, is it not? There was a chink. And what you in effect have is the wholesale denial of the law by the medical profession. It's a kind of perjury. The abortions that take place are, in essence, illegal. Because abortion is illegal unless, and of course we know that a mum's mental health is not worse if she continues with the pregnancy. It's not better, if she continues with the pregnancy. In fact, we know that it's worse. So truth has been turned on its head. And the law has been manipulated, and the medical profession has been manipulated. Or they do it deliberately, but the point is, truth is turned on its head. Justice is paralyzed. The law is paralyzed. So can you see here, we have a very high bar on law, a very high bar on law, which is broken by a chink. By the right men, the wrong men, actually taking an opportunity. And that cultural revolution since the Queen came to the throne 70 years ago, that since the 1950s, in 1952 abortion was illegal. Today it's legal up to 24 weeks and up to birth for disabled children. When the Queen came to the throne, 4.8% of babies were born outside of marriage. Today it's 46% are born outside of marriage. Well, and can you imagine how many are not born because they've been conceived outside of marriage? When the Queen came to the throne, there were 350,000 marriages. Today, there are 240,000 marriages with 16 million more people in the population. When the Queen came to the throne, there were 34,000 divorces per year. Today, there are 120,000 divorces per year. And as Linda has said, it was meant to be rare. David Steele said 300 abortions every year. Well, in 1967, there were 21,000 abortions. By the year 2000, 200,000 abortions basically every year. 200,000 abortions every single year in England and Wales. These are government statistics. 10 million, the population of Austria, the population of Hungary. It's 15% of the entire UK population. It's wiping out Birmingham, Bradford, Bristol, Cambridge, Cardiff, Chester, Derby, Edinburgh, Leeds, Leicester. It's Liverpool. All of these cities put together. It's 5 times the UK casualties in 2 world wars. And we know that abortion doesn't stop there. We know that once you no longer protect life intrinsically in the womb, then what you have then is you have reproductive technologies growing. So in 1978, you have for the first time life created in the laboratory by way of IVF. But at that time, you had to be a married mum and dad. You had to be medically infertile. And then in 1990, you have the Human Fertilization and Embryology Act, which for the first time allows for the creation of embryos, because science can now do it, with the express purpose of experimenting upon them and then destroying them. And then in 2004, you have for the first time in our history a cloned human being, a license to clone a human being. What's cloning? It's man making man in the image of man. You go from taking a life 1967 to making a life 1990 to faking a life 2004 to 2008, the Human Fertilization and Embryology Act, where our parliament just across the road here allowed for the creation of animal-human hybrids. That's the mixing of cow's eggs with human sperm for scientific purpose. That is defacing God, defacing the human race. That is a direct attack on Genesis 1. It's not just the abortion stats. We don't know how many babies have been destroyed because of fertility IVF. We don't know how many babies are currently frozen or destroyed. Possibility also of 3-parent embryos. So do you see that when you give way in a little chink in 1967, abortion is illegal unless, when you don't protect life as life from the moment of conception, you allow a chink, which then means that you can manipulate life, and you manipulate it in the law, and you manipulate it in practice. And very often what happens is it's not the law that sets the standard, although it helps, but law very often follows a practice. So if the practice becomes that the law is routinely broken, you end up with the law then following the practice. But it's, of course, as was prayed earlier, when you do not protect life, and that runs alongside reproductive technologies, you actually get a wholesale turn upside down of what family is defined as. Because now, if you can access the creation of life via surrogacy, and if human rights mean that you can make marriage between two men and two women because that is your right, and you have a right to a child, so you can have a child because reproductive technologies mean that you can by donor sperm or by a surrogate mother, then the wholesale way in which we view family and therefore the protection of the unborn child is turned on its head. Because now family in English law means a man and a man, a woman and a woman, a man and a woman, married, cohabiting, civilly partnered. And all of those are viewed as equivalent in our equalities and human rights legislation. All of them are human rights legislation. Over many years, we've sought to challenge abortion up to birth, a mum's right to be involved if her daughter is pregnant, because this Sue Axon was a woman who had multiple underage abortions, and she wanted to change the law with regard to that because she felt that children needed to be protected. Doctors investigated because they're saving lives. You're going to be hearing from CBR UK. A very important case, this one was back in about 2012-13, where essentially we secured in law the right to show these images, which is a very important thing in terms of changing the culture, being able to speak of that. Do you remember, though, when sex selection abortions, where babies, just because they were baby girls, were being aborted, and we caught that on camera? The Crown Prosecution Service said it wasn't in the public interest to prosecute the doctors who were prepared to abort baby girls. The brave and beautiful Aisling Hubert from CBR UK, together with the Christian Legal Centre, brought that case. They came against her and came against her for seeking to expose the injustice of abortion on baby girls. They came against her and faced her down with £47,000 of costs, which of course we were able to look up together. We were able to ensure that she was protected from that. Abortion signed off, pre-signing of forms, illegal. Those that save babies outside clinics are removed outside clinics. The move to push for buffer zones, so to stop a place where we can rescue the babies. This unrelenting change of language to say abortion is a medical procedure. It should be treated, we should just be able to access abortion because we're women, when and however and whensoever that we want. Just a continual push in Parliament on these matters. Again, the Stop Stella campaign, it was a CBR campaign. Again, notices, community notices put on those that were protesting on Christian hacking there. Again, for us, seeking to ensure that we're able to protest and speak and to expose. These things are most important. Just play this video very quickly. It's a minute or so of Christian hacking. I know he's going to be speaking to you later, but just watch him get arrested outside for praying outside an abortion clinic.
I believe that I've given you the answer.
Everyone should be against buffer zones because they are effectively criminalising peaceful protests in our country. This is Matic Lane, the zone where you're not allowed to pray, and actually extends all the way down both edges of the lane. The clinic, just an unassuming white building down there on the left-hand side.
They've been, praying. So all around here is where they're not allowed to go. So they can't go in the park or anything like that.
I mean, I do think it's crazy that there's a patch of land in London where you're not allowed to pray to God, you know? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name.
Stand up, you're under arrest.
I can't stand up, I'm in a wheelchair. I'm not moving, so I'm praying.
That's all I've done. I haven't done anything wrong other than pray, Lord Jesus. I pray, Lord Jesus, have mercy, Lord Jesus. If you knew of a place that was killing innocent human beings because they were small, or because they were less developed, or maybe because they were tragically disabled, or because they were just an inconvenience, what would your response be? Well, my response was to pray, and yet I'm being charged with a criminal offence because of it.
We stand, can I go back to my presentation? We stand at the Christian Legal Centre. We stand with everyone that's out there, outside those abortion clinics. We need to be there to save the men and the women, to save the babies. We see the turnarounds. They want to apply buffer zones. They want to take the people out. They want to stop the women having access to alternatives. It's vital that we stand, but it's also vital that we build our own safe places that are known. We have to take back the space. So we've got this massive culture of death, but it was under the COVID regulations that we saw come in a move, a really swift move. You see that the enemy never sleeps and the abortion industry never sleeps. They've been waiting to make pills by post permanent. So what we saw happen in March 2020, when the Coronavirus Act came in, was, well, this kind of, what's interesting is, well, how the government was talking, the SAGE document on manipulating behaviour, use media to increase the sense of personal threat, use media to increase sense of responsibility to others, use and promote social approval for desired behaviours, consider use of social disapproval for failure to comply. So this is how the government is saying, you know, telling people to get, essentially to be locked down, to be in fear of their life. But in the midst of that, in the midst of the government locking us down, what do we then get? Anne Farady writing to Anne Farady, at the time, the chief executive of BPAS, writing to the then Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, asking for pills by post to be made permanent. Boris Johnson, on the 23rd of March, announces lockdown. Helen Whately, who's in the is a health minister, approves the new policy without, so she approves pills by post abortion without Matt Hancock's approval, and she tweets about it. that tweet is then deleted, okay, because it's spotted by the pro-life lobby. So they wanted to just slip it in under the radar, under emergency regulations. On March the 24th, Matt Hancock says on the floor of the Parliament that the abortion law wouldn't be changed. Lord Bethell says then in the House of Lords as the government minister that the abortion law wouldn't be changed. They won't settle. The coronavirus regulations go through. But that weekend, the abortion lobby doesn't rest. They've got direct access. We've seen this because we brought a challenge against the government, and we've seen the email documentation. The chief executives of BPAS and Mary Stopes have direct access into leading civil servants in the Department of Health. So if you want to know how to change things, ladies and gentlemen, part of our Wilberforce Academy at Christian Concern, but a whole raft of other initiatives, we ourselves have to be in the places of influence. Well, you know, we have to, they're essentially in the Department of Health. You have people making policies who have direct contact by email, by phone, with the leaders of the abortion industry. Then they write a letter to the Times, signed by 50 leading medics, calling for pills by post. So essentially, they apply so much pressure, the lobby, on the Department of Health, that the Department of Health U-turns, and the government announces that the temporary DIY abortion home policy will occur. So they announced it, they then said they wouldn't do it, and then they turned back again when they came under pressure. And here's the letter that was signed. As you can see, you know, vulnerable women, it's too dangerous for them to go out when they need an abortion. So too dangerous for their health to go out because they might get coronavirus. But they need to have the pills sent home in order to kill their baby. They won't see anyone. But look how this is signed, you see, by so many professor of epidemiology and so on, professors across the country. So we then bring a legal challenge immediately. We get pushed back. We go to the Court of Appeal. We get a full hearing in the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal refuses to accept evidence where we can show that women are being harmed as a result of this policy. We get pushed back. We lose. Our appeal does not get accepted by the Supreme Court. We're now currently awaiting to go to the European Court of Human Rights on the way in which the government behaved. The government then consulted about whether to make, then you get the shift to, this is all going to fall merely under the Coronavirus Act regulations, but then they say, because it never stops the evil, they then say we're now going to consult on whether to make it permanent. Hang on a minute, you weren't going to do it. You said it was only going to last for the period of the Coronavirus Act. Now you're consulting on whether or not to make it permanent. Do you see the erosion? And do you see how the people don't see? Am I making sense, everyone? Am I even making sense? Yes. So they consult. They open up the consultation, and then it's published on the 26th of November, but they literally don't then feed back on it. It closes, and then they don't feed back on it for a whole year. Year and a half, in fact. In February, they come back. And what you then get on the 24th of February is Sajid Javid, who's a health secretary, and whom we have been lobbying at Care for Women to talk about how unconstitutional it was. So we begin to fight back. He understands that, and he says that the pills by post would be ended. And he announces it. But what happens when he announces it? The abortion lobby gets straight on the phones. They've got all their people in the division. And you get Baroness Sugg, who's a Conservative peer, then doing what she should not constitutionally do, is attach an amendment to the Health and Social Care Bill to maintain the existing provision of at-home early medical abortion following a telephone or video consultation. So what you then have, just a few days ago, gone 1 a.m. in the morning, it was passed by 75 votes to 35 votes in the House of Lords. So a Conservative peer brings a wrecking amendment to what's been stated by the government, and we weren't there again. And you know what? I stand here and I'm going to say I feel personally responsible for that. I knew that it was happening. Why wasn't I there at 1 o'clock? Why weren't we all there at 1 o'clock? Why hadn't I called you all out? Why hadn't we got the missing 40 votes? Why hadn't we literally taxied members of the House of Lords to stop this evil? So now we face the next showdown, which is this Wednesday, which is why you have those postcards. Do not leave this place today without filling out those postcards and praying into, because if we actually resist this on Wednesday, when it's voted on in the House of Commons, we resist it down permanently, as it were. Well, permanently for now. Because you see, for them, it will be hard law. It's the biggest change in hard law since the 1967 Act. It blows wide open. It makes it a medical procedure. So it's changing the abortion law through the back door on a bill that never was meant to be. It's evil. I'm wrong. And so we need to face it down. So will you join me in facing it down? I wasn't there. I feel responsible. Let's turn this around for Wednesday. Let's see the Lord move. You're going to be hearing through the day of some of the terrible stories of pills by post-abortion. My time has ended. Isn't it ironic that the man that saved babies, Dr. Dermot Kearney, that he was stopped from doing abortion pill reversal? So you have a right to have your pills by post-abortion, women, through a telephone call. But if you change your mind, the doctor who helps to save your baby, they wanted his license. And you know that Jonathan Lord, the chief executive of Mary Stopes, got personally involved in calling women who had been seen by Dr. Dermot Kearney. Personally involved to ask them to bring complaints. Well, you know what we need to do? You know what the answer is? We're going to build the hospitals. We're going to build an abortion pill reversal line. We're going to build pregnancy crisis lines. This is what we're going to do. We're going to mobilize. We're going to keep on speaking. We're going to have civil servants in the right places. That's what we're going to do. But it starts today with filling in a postcard. Thank you.